It's another edition of the Southern Ontario Dirt Show podcast with Jonathan Howe and Travis Cunningham. Thanks to our partners, Oshweek Speedway and Bicknell Racing Products. This show, we're actually, in the greenish or whatever. This is a successful podcast now, thanks to those guys. So we really appreciate what Oshweek and what BRP are doing for us. And this is, of course, episode 39. So we're continuing with the game of trying to figure out what drivers come to mind when we think of number 39. Travis, who you got?
1980 Merrittville Speedway Modified Champion Don Turner.
Nice. Good historic pick. I'm going with Brett Stratford in his BS 39.
Yep. Brett's always been 39. That's his number. I love they added the
Yeah,
BS to it.
Yeah, right? It's kind of fun in the booth to say because it's like...
Is this for his
something
initials
bad
or something
ever happens.
else?
Well, if something bad ever happens, I always have the option. It's like the 39 car just up to a bunch of BS. Or that's some BS that the 39 is finding themselves in. But yeah, that was a good pick. That was actually a struggle. I thought there'd be more 39s that came to mind. So maybe if you guys think of anybody, I'm sure there's more. So if you're listening and you think of another 39, let us know. Feel free to comment, tweet at us at sods_pod, and let us know what numbers you think of when you think of 39. So where should we start today, Travis? We got to be kind of quick on ours because this is going to be our first week where we have a two-parter. Our interview this week with Bob Slack went pretty long, and we enjoyed every minute of it. I hope Bob did as well. And we're going to split it up over a couple episodes here because there's a lot of good stories and a lot of juicy details that make sense to just try to split it into two episodes. So part one of Bob Slack coming up a little later in the show. But I guess we got to start with Volusia. You want to start with Volusia and Super Dirt Cars? Since that's kind of what we got going on right now. And I think just before we went live, our boy Matt Williamson went quick time.
That is correct, yeah. Just watched Matt go quick time. Apparently it was a different car that he was running last night. This one seems pretty tuned up. Almost hit the 16-second bracket. And for everyone who says UMP mods are just as fast as Super Dirt Car Series mods, they are incorrect because UMPs were in like the 18s last week and Matt's almost in the 16s. So, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, they're moving tonight. And, of course, they raced last night at the Federated Auto Parts Dirt Car Nationals. And we're taping this on Thursday, so Wednesday night it got started with Matt ended up finishing 6th after starting 8th, so gain of 2, but he was a little bit higher up in the race order at one point or another. Stuart Friesen brings him home 3rd, and Max McLaughlin ends up the winner after starting 2nd.
Yeah, one caution, and it was on lap 1, and it was for a pretty big wreck between 33 of Reimer and 25 of my old sprint car buddy, Mikhail Perrant. And those two got together hard. Reimer's car was destroyed. They pretty much didn't get any sleep. They fixed it. And Max McLaughlin, where did he start? Outside pole, I think. Rudolph was on the pole. Max had the better line. And Rudolph kind of messed up the second start. Otherwise, he was pretty quick. He got by Matt later on in the race for 4th. And Rudolph, he's pretty much a local boy, so good run to him. And Stewie in 3rd. And Max pretty much checked out after that. Could have been cool if there was a caution to choke them all up. And then it would be Max, Matt Shepard, Friesen, and who did I just say was 4th? Rudolph and Williamson would all got jumbled together. So a caution would have been cool, but didn't get it.
Yeah, it could have got real interesting.
Yeah. And Mad Max did good. And that's his kind of track on the gas cushion. And he won $5,000.
Yep. It's been a busy week for Stuart Friesen as he was down in New Smyrna as well and racing super late models. I think that was Monday and Tuesday. He might have made a start there. William Byron from the Cup Series ended up winning both of the races that Stuart Friesen was in. But I think Friesen had a top 5 in at least one of the starts, if not both. So it's been a busy week. And tonight he's going to be getting in the truck and doing some practice and qualifying for the Truck Series race tomorrow from Daytona. So busy week for Friesen, but there's also some kind of local storylines coming out of New Smyrna as well.
Yeah, Friesen's also probably in his car on the hammer right now, getting back to Volusia to start last in his heat. True racer he is. And I know the one night he finished 11th. I'm not sure about the other night. He had to start tail and then this New Smyrna. But yeah, Glenn was down there too and running his pro late model. And Stuart was in the supers. Glenn was in the pros. They kind of looked the same. if it's for dirt people, it's going to be kind of telling them apart. Just like actual people probably have a little bit hard time telling our stuff apart, like the sportsmen and modifieds and 360s and crates and stuff, just by looking. But yeah, Glenn playing real life iRacing has raced like a 360 sprint car at Volusia, UMP mod at Volusia, and then that new Smyrna with the Pro Late, and then pretty sure he's. I'm not sure if he's at East Bay tonight at the 360s or not, but yeah, real life iRacing for Glenn because he has that 358 mod too.
Yeah, he can find himself into pretty much
Yeah,
any
and the
kind of
Pinty's
car he
car.
wants to drive at any given
Yeah,
point. Yeah, exactly. Right. You mentioned the King of the 360s. That's going on tonight as well, and he's a past champion of that. Glenn Stiers is.
yeah, 2012. I was there. I went down with Mikey Krechka, and he raced there. And yeah, but I was there for Glenn Stiers winning that, and it was a kind of a rubber down race. Shane Stewart was leading it early, and it was kind of one of those races where everyone got a flat, and but Glenn didn't get a flat, and he ended up holding them off. There was one other guy that didn't get a flat too, and yeah, he won 10 grand at King 360. His car won that a bunch of times. Wayne Johnson won it there, and I think Chad Kemenow, Mikey Kutchka, and Kevin Levies were the crew on that one with Kemenow. And yeah, that's Glenn's cars won that race quite a few times, King of 360s at East Bay, and I was there for one.
Nice. Yeah, it's been busy down in the state of Florida, that's for sure. The All Star Circuit of Champions, they were down at East Bay on
Yeah,
what was that, Tuesday night,
Monday and
and Monday night. I
Tuesday.
think they were also
Yep.
raced.
And our local boy D Dubs Monday went 14th to 6th. Second night still made the show 12th to 12th, and Liam Martin was down there as well. He only had the 360 and trying to make the show, just trying to get some laps for tonight and the rest of the weekend, I'm sure. And he had some pretty good times with the 360, and tough sledding against 410s though, and especially when there's bite like there was and stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty tricky stuff down there, but good to see him still go down and represent, right? So,
Who else was down there? Palace.
hmm
Yeah, Tyler Palace was down there as well.
Dykstra had the motor issue, of course, so that's kind of hopefully not super
Yeah,
expensive, but
yeah. Jake made the show for the World of Outlaw race, and then had motor problem on the like opening, not the opening lap, like even before the four wide, but still counts as a start, I think. And I'm pretty sure he still gets paid with the new Outlaw rule where there's no alternates, and yeah, they just pay the guy if he can't make it because it sucks that you're broke, so you're gonna need the money anyway. So, and I think it was just a valve spring for Dykstra, so hopefully it's not that big of a deal on their 410 because he was pretty quick.
yep. And as far as dirt drivers going in the big times, I think we had what, three or four of the top four in Daytona 500 qualifying, including pole sitter Alex Bowman, all dirt guys. Tony Stewart pointed that out on qualifying. So the dirt world, getting a lot of representation.
Who was the
Although
other one? Briscoe?
yeah, Briscoe, I think, ended up third in qualifying, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So actually, might have been fourth. I think Byron might have got him, but Tony Stewart did point out at one point that the dirt guys were well represented. And Alex Bowman, pole sitter for the Daytona 500, finished right behind Dylan Westbrook at the All Stars Circuit of Champions race on Monday
Yeah.
night. So D Dubs gets to say he beat a Daytona 500 pole winner. So
Yeah. That's our boy D-Dubs.
yeah, that's
Nothing
what
new
he
to him.
does. Yeah, right. He is one of the best in the business from around these
Beat
parts.
Stenhouse
And
at Volusia.
yes,
Yeah, I
exactly
think we
right.
said that right. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to get Westbrook in a Cup car now. Let's make
Yeah.
it happen.
He's already
Let's
done
get
the
crazy.
truck.
Yeah, let's get nuts. Uh, as far as Cup guys go, I wanted to bring up the fact Kyle Larson on the Corey LaJoy podcast, Stacking Pennies, that they do for NASCAR.com, and you can tune in on NASCAR.com, their YouTube channel, all those other places. It's where we get the Penny Memorial question that I stole from that podcast. But Kyle Larson was on it, and there's lots of good little tidbits for dirt racing fans. Of course, anytime Kyle's talking, and kind of teed up what the deal he's got going on with Brad Sweet's going to be all about, and announced that he's going to be racing in that $1 million to win race at Eldora. And I think maybe one of the more fascinating things, as talented and as good at driving Kyle Larson is, at the Chili Bowl, he was one of the only guys allegedly in the A mains that he's won not using adjustable shocks, which is kind of surprises me. Like, is it becoming pretty much just a normal thing to have that much driver control for different classes of dirt racing?
Yeah, they started allowing that kind of stuff on the non-wing type cars because, like in the wing cars, we have the wing we can pull back, and that's like a huge change. So if like we're loose, we can just yank the wing back and until we make ourselves tight, and hopefully that makes us better. But like the non-wing guys were always married to what they had, know with nothing better to do or nothing to be able to adjust the car from the inside. So they added the adjustable shocks, and like now it's gotten pretty crazy. Like some guys can have there's four-way adjustable shocks, and like so you, some chili bowl guys, if they had a four-way adjustable, they could have four knobs just for one shock. Most guys go like six, I think, two like just a rebound or something. Like they only have one either compression or rebound for the fronts, and then both compression and rebound on the rears. Some guys probably have eight, and probably get pretty complicated. And certainly, if he's not
That's what
comfortable,
I'm thinking.
yes.
Like
But like a
immediately
guy
when
like
I
Kevin
started like
Swindell, like he's all
hearing about
over it.
that.
Like that's how he won
Yeah,
6 chili bowls in a row because he knows what to do. Right?
that was something that they brought up, and
Or
Larson
four
was like,
chili
"Yeah,
bowls
I
in a
could
row.
never do that." He's like, "I have a hard enough time when Cliff tells me to turn on a fan in a cup car." So,
Yeah,
yeah,
he
I don't
said
know
he's
how
worried
he's
about
gonna handle
his
being in.
Indy car, right?
Yeah, I don't know how he's gonna manage being an IndyCar. I mean, like they have to go between different like engine mapping settings
Yeah.
within like the same lap. Although I guess when you have, all that time, but like you figure the time they spend on like a lap down the backstretch and or the front stretch is like the same as basically a lap around most of the dirt places that he runs and what he runs in. So
Yeah.
I'm sure Larson will figure it out. But for dirt racing fans, I would recommend going and checking out that interview with Kyle Larson, and I also recommend checking out our interview with Bob Slack. First half of it coming up for you now on the Southern Ontario Dirt Show podcast. The Southern Ontario Dirt Show is brought to you by Ohsweken Speedway, Southern Ontario's home for Friday night excitement. For over 25 years, Ohsweken Speedway has promoted and played host to sprint car racing, with a new season of family-friendly events to be unveiled in the near future. Catch our own Travis Cunningham as he races weekly in the 360 division each Friday night in pursuit of a season-long championship. The Friday night lineups are rounded out by crate sprints, thunderstocks, and mini-stock divisions as well. In addition to weekly racing, Ohsweken Speedway will also hold several marquee events for the Southern Ontario Sprints, the Action Sprint Tour in their West Series and National Series, as well as a visit from Canada's premier stock car series, the NASCAR Pinty Series, on August 14th and 15th for their only stop on dirt. Mark your calendars as the 3/8 mile dirt track located in Ohsweken, Ontario welcomes drivers from across the country and beyond for the 19th running of the Canadian Sprint Car Nationals, which is scheduled for September 16th. To keep up to date with the latest news from the track, be sure to find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. For track information on policies, admissions, directions, and more, be sure to visit ohswekenspeedway.ca. That's OHSWEKEN Speedway.ca. Ohsweken Speedway, your home for Friday night excitement. The Southern Ontario Dirt Show is brought to you by Bicknell Racing Products. The last 40 years plus have seen Bicknell Racing Products grow to be an industry leader for racers and enthusiasts alike. Their St. Catharines location is home to 20,000 square feet of manufacturing and retail space, with a second store in Niagara Falls, New York, and a dealer network that continues to grow day by day to serve Southern Ontario, Western New York, and beyond. Bicknell Racing Products distributes Hoosier tires for much of Eastern Canada, New York, and even parts of Pennsylvania. BRP has everything you could need to keep your car performing at its peak, with genuine parts from the manufacturer. They even have a technical support line committed to helping you with the most up-to-date information and feedback from racers and crew chiefs. Have you ever thought about a career in the automotive or racing industry? Now is your chance to take the leap with Bicknell Racing Products. They are looking for CNC machine operators, welders, and more to join their team this season. Please send all resumes to Dana Curving at BicknellRacingProducts.com. That's DANACURVIN at BicknellRacingProducts.com. For further information on Bicknell Racing Products and to find a dealer near you, visit BRP online at www.BicknellRacingProducts.com or on Facebook or at twitter.com/BicknellRacing. All right, and we are live on the Southern Ontario Dirt Show podcast with Bob Slack. Bob, thanks for taking the time tonight to join us and tell some stories.
Yeah, no problem at all.
So I guess that we really should start with the very beginnings, and maybe the beginning is Cayuga. Is that kind of your first racing memories?
Yeah, for sure. That I guess I was born in January of '76, and so I would have went to my first race in you know April or May or whenever it would have been at Cayuga, I guess, and sat in the grandstands there every Friday night and watched my dad race, and all the greats, the Hanleys and Biedermans, and on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, so like your grandpa was like the best promoter in my opinion in Ontario. So like talk about how it was like watching him like bring in all the NASCAR stars and the ASA races and all that kind of stuff. And like he basically set like the precedent for promoters today, in my opinion.
Yeah, he was extremely uneducated, but extremely intelligent. And I don't know how, like, he had like incredible insight on anything, whether it was, recessions were coming or what people wanted to see, and, you know, shaking hands, kissing babies, the whole 9 yards. So that was really neat as a kid because, I got to be around, you name it. Like, Bobby Allison was my hero, and how many times he came up and to race at Cayuga. And I can remember him and my dad and myself, when I was little, we were driving a Buick Grand National from the racetrack back to Sam Rounce's to look at a car that Davey Allison was going to drive for Sam. And um, Sterling drove one of Dad's cars at Cayuga. Dale Senior drove one of Dad's cars at Cayuga. It was like pretty crazy. I guess we didn't realize, we just thought that was normal because we grew up doing that. So we thought it was normal that you just got to meet all these people.
Yeah,
I guess it wasn't.
It's pretty wild.
that is wild. Like yeah, like the family in Ontario, in my opinion, racing at the beginning. So like me and my mom were talking just like even how like today, like when the Oshweekend brings the World of Outlaws in and all that kind of stuff and all the names, like you say, your grandpa set that.
Yeah,
First guy to do it.
yeah. I would. I mean, as far as I know, I mean, I guess he bought the track in '66. I think it was the first year that he ran it, maybe '65, something like that. And there wasn't a whole lot of people doing stuff like that. But I mean, you're being in Canada, you're always really trapped and really, hands tied for anything. And for him to be able to pull that off was incredible. Because knowing him, he just called somebody out of the blue and said, "Hey, I want you to come to my racetrack." And he had the grass landing strip, and them guys used to fly their airplanes in, and Bobby would fly in, and Mark Martin and Ray Dillon and all them guys, like those guys that Bob Seneca, I think he had a plane, so them guys would fly in and come race at that place, which was, I mean, if you were anybody that was around in the days when Grandpa owned it, it was
Place to be.
without spending the money on it like the previous or the current owners, I guess, did. Um, they obviously they just took it to the next level, but that was his baby. He would drive around in his car, and we used to drive down the airstrip at 140 kilometers an hour in his Oldsmobile 98 to make sure it was smooth enough for airplanes to land. And that's the God's truth. And he'd stop in the middle of the driveway and see a rock that was too big or one in the grass, stop, pick it up, put it in his car. Like he was just an incredible person,
That's
an
awesome.
incredible worker, and just an incredible promoter.
Is there any one kind of lesson or something you learned from your grandfather that has carried with you throughout your time in the racing industry?
Just life in general. Be kind, be kind as you can, be as generous as you can, and make sure you can work your ass off.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is the work ethic for sure. Because if you know the
Yeah,
Slacks,
he was.
they know how to work their butts off.
He died on the dance floor. Well, he had a heart attack on the dance floor, but he'd worked the day before, and he was 90 years old. He worked every day of his life and never wasted anything, except all the money he pissed away on a racetrack. But that's what he loved.
All right.
Ah, you call it pissing away. It's a good investment, I think.
Yeah.
That's a terrible investment, but I mean, we all make them. I'm sitting here looking at a bunch of them at the race shop right now. So
I can imagine.
if it's not that, you'd be doing drugs, I guess. So this is better.
All right, so let's go from that into like being Randy Slack's son, and then how you learned how to be a fabricator and that part of your life.
Um, watching my dad race when I was a kid was incredible, right? Like anybody who can actually get to sit in a grandstand and watch your dad race and watch your dad win, and that was really awesome. Um, you know, I've always said that when you're a kid, like you don't always get along with your dad or see eye to eye, but no matter how mad I was at him, at certain point in times in my life, which is always my fault because I always say that I was 35 before my dad got smart enough that we could get along. But I always said like my dad was one of the smartest people I ever met. He's just pretty cool, calm, and collected. Really he's really naturally intelligent. Um, just I don't know. That was really awesome. I mean, I grew up in the best time of racing that I think I could have grew up in, and everybody says the same thing.
Fact.
Like,
I'm totally jealous of you.
the generation before me probably says the same thing because they got to watch, their heroes. Everybody has their heroes, right? So,
Yeah.
but um, what I got to witness, I think, was probably the coolest thing the coolest time I could ever grown up.
So, what in particular made that time so special to you? You mentioned heroes, and you mentioned already some of the guys that your grandfather was able to bring in. But what exactly to you makes your era and the era that you grew up watching of racing here in Southern Ontario more special than anything else you may have seen?
Probably because I was a little kid. So, everybody you looked at, you looked up to. So, like I said, it was no different than any other generation. Like, I might have liked Bobby Allison, and he meant as much to me as the next generation loved Jeff Gordon, right? So, um, I think it's probably it was probably just because I was a little kid and I was surrounded by you know some pretty incredible people. Like, yeah, I mean, just look at what Junior Hanley did in the all the years of racing and his success all through the states and all the people that drove his cars and that he built for. Um, that's pretty hard to match. I mean, there's lots of guys that have been successful, but what he did, like he had a cult following. I mean, everybody painted their car orange and had the same color number or the same style, prismatic numbers on them. Like I teased my dad. I said it was
Yep.
like a friggin' cult. Like, I mean, right from, yeah, like I
It
mean
still
Harold
is.
Fair. I mean, Trickle. Like all them guys painted them cars just like his because I don't know why. Maybe I don't know how I would ever convince any of my customers to paint all their cars the same as mine.
Yeah.
Not that they
Totally
want to.
true.
It's ours is just our race cars are simple and timeless. They've looked like this since the '70s, but yeah, I just don't know how that ever came about. But so I guess I mean that kind of stuff just made it really special. You just got to witness in the rivalries with Biederman and Junior and um, Tom Biederman was a really neat guy and a really incredible guy. Just not necessarily a really personable guy, which hurt him, but he was every bit as good a driver as Junior was, and some people say in traffic that Biederman was probably better than Junior was, but I just got to see some of the greatest stuff and good car counts, and I don't know, it was just really really awesome.
Yep. All right, so let's move into the part of your life where I got to know you, and that's like I think you're mid 20s by now, and you started building the awesome go karts. But by now you're already the awesome fabricator. So give us the story of like how you learned to fabricate, and then your go kart endeavors. Like you built the first offset oval track go kart, really.
Yeah, I guess kind of. It's probably kind of true. How did I learn how to fabricate?
Yeah.
Well, my cousin Randy Slack, who would be Dave Bailey's uncle, so like Dave Bailey and
Yep.
I are actually, I don't know how we're cousins of some description. Um, he worked for Fred Smith building drag cars, and he had a shop kind of down the dirt road from my parents' house. If neither of them were on dirt roads, but there was a back closed road that connected them, and I used to ride my grandpa's old mini bike over there and just I don't know. I just kept watching. I was like, man, I want to be this guy. Like, this is the dude that I want to, I want to be. And then, I knew Kenny Stewart from Lincoln Manufacturing and Al Harenga and, John Fletcher and Junior and all them guys and Sam Rounce and, Alex Nagy, all them guys, they were all good at stuff. And I'm like, I just want to be good at it. So when I was like, I don't know, when I was 18, this is when I got my first TIG welder. A guy actually loaned me the money to buy it. His name was Roy Bryden. He was one of the partners in the corporation, The Color Your World. He owned Kart Clinic, and I raced for him. And somehow or another, I talked him into lending me the money, $1,800, I remember, to buy this thing. And but before that, I just started. Well, Shane Yancey and I, we were the ones who built the first go-kart. And I mean, I guess I should be embarrassed about how ugly it was, but you can't be embarrassed about, trying to live out a dream or do something. So I wouldn't be embarrassed about it, but I couldn't weld that great. So my dad said, well, there's no way you're welding that thing, because I built it at his truck shop. So we got his mechanic to weld it, who used to be the racetrack welder at Cayuga Speedway, Ross Smith. And the welds were about an inch wide on this thing. And I didn't have a tubing bender, so I heated up the one bend that I put in it, heated it up and bent it around a 8-inch piece of pipe that was a A-frame hoist for pulling engines out of trucks. And I mean, this thing was just, you couldn't imagine how ugly this thing was. And Shane was selling his school books. He was in university. I was 16. And he was selling his school books to buy parts like bearing hangers and stuff like that we needed to build it. And we got this thing built in typical fashion, finished it at about, 5 o'clock in the morning, and loaded up to go to an indoor race at Niagara Falls, which was on a Sunday after the midget races. And we pulled this thing out. I mean, they are just laughing me out of the park. Like, what is this piece of shit, basically? And went out, and Shane says, well, you did most of the work. You should drive it. So we went out and won the first heat by about a half a track. And it was just like, people were like, what just happened, right? I didn't end up winning the feature. I can't remember, something happened. I think I ended up second. But I mean, we were running on tires that we, pulled out of garbage cans. Like, it was just a bunch of junk. We did have a good motor, but nobody had done the offset thing. And it was like, back in those days, you might have been lucky to get 51% left side weight. And this thing had about 60. It was just, I mean, it was just literally just disgusting looking, but it was also disgustingly fast. So,
Engineered well.
I don't even know if it was engineered well, man.
Yeah,
It was
just better than all the others of the day. Like, everyone was just driving around on straight up carts.
yeah, like, its advantage was it had left side weight. Like, I mean, that's when you're running ovals and indoors. I mean, God loves left side weight. So
yeah.
But then I decided that I guess I'd better try and get a little bit better at building them. So, just slowly worked at it. And then I would tack them together. And then I took one to cousin Randy, and he TIG welded it for me. We just ran across a picture. I was so proud of this thing. It was just the frame. I took it in my house, and there's a picture of me in the living room of my mom and dad's house, which is way too nice of a house to have a go-kart chassis in. And I was balancing the one end of it on my foot so it wouldn't touch the floor, and showing my mom. And I kept it in my bedroom that night. I was so proud. Cousin Randy TIG welded this thing for me, and it was just. Then I decided, well, I guess I'm going to learn how to TIG weld. So we did that for a while, and then I ended up doing a co-op at Bicknell's, believe it or not, for school. I was the first kid that they ever let go outside of our region to do a co-op. So Pete and my dad and Sam Rounce had all done business over the years with, the first dirt asphalt car that Bicknell ever built. Dad drove it. Pete and Randy owned the car, and Dad drove it and owned the motor. So, and they sold fuel and tires and stuff at the racetrack for Pete, like up at Cayuga and stuff. So I ended up doing a co-op there, but in the meantime, I had found this abandoned building that my grandpa had, and it was full of snow. And I said, if I shovel that out, can I use it? And I didn't have any running water or toilets or anything like that. So I shoveled the snow out of this thing and kind of moved my stuff in there. And he let me just work out of it because it was literally just an abandoned building behind his old lumberyard. And I was making aluminum seats and stuff. So I'd get up at like 5 a.m. and I'd go there and I'd cut the seats out with a jigsaw, and I had no heat in it in the middle of the winter, and I'd wear big lineman's coveralls. And then I'd drive to Bicknell's and I'd do my co-op, which ended up building all of their go-kart jigs and all that stuff for them to build the Barbarian carts, which was Joe Barber, still a really good friend of mine, Bliss International Speedway. And then I would, after co-op was over, they would let me use a sheet metal brake, and I would bend the seats because before I was just using one that I'd made by hand. And then I'd put the seats in my truck, and I was supposed to go back to school, but most of the time I'd end up driving up to Kitchener-Waterloo, where Colin Turnbull and his dad Larry and his brother Chris, who's since passed on, they had a shop up there. They built the Bicknell Racing engines, and we were building champ carts. So I had my welder up there, and I'd go up there and we'd weld, go-karts till midnight or 1 a.m, and then I'd weld the seats up because my TIG welder was up there, and then I'd drive home at 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and start all over again. So my dad used to give me shit all the time that I had to sleep at some point in time, but I was still going to school, and I was supposed to be going to school. I went some of the time, but I was good at it. I just didn't like it. So that was kind of like the real start of it, as far as actually building stuff to sell. That's like on a part-time basis. Then when I left school, I went to work for my dad because he owns a trucking company and tarpon trailers and washing trucks and all that stuff. And one day I just said to him that I gave my 2 weeks notice and I was going to quit. And he kind of looked at me and said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to go build go-karts." And he's like, "Is that right?" And I was working at the Domtar plant in Caledonia, which is since closed too, and that's where we loaded all the trailers. And then if I got really busy with the go-kart stuff, if I had to work on stuff during the day, I would work during the day, but then I would load trailers at night. So I would work the overnight shift loading trailers instead. But then the problem was the next morning I still had to either finish working on go-kart stuff or load more trailers. So kind of ended up working myself actually sick at one point. I ended up getting mono because of it. And
jeez.
That wasn't a great time. So I had to take a couple weeks off I was supposed to, but I took a little bit of time off to try and recover and went back at it again. Never got it again, I guess. So, so I decided I was going to quit. And I'll never forget, the Monday was the first day that I was going to be on my own. And Dad called me Monday morning and says, "Hey, I need you to go deliver a load for me." And I was like, I thought I quit, but I'm like, whatever. So went and did that, and then just started building stuff. Built some road course carts. I was always fixing. Like I fixed some go karts for Brett Stratford. They wrecked a go kart one time, so I fixed it, and it ran really good. And then I got tied up with that Bicknell Racing, which was the arrive and drive thing they have, or still have, I guess, out at Hamilton Cartways. And he called me up on a Friday and said, "I need 10 go-karts." And I was like, "Okay, well, when do you need 10 go-karts by?" And he says, "Next Friday." I was like, well, I was broke. I didn't have any money, so I'd done anything for money. So I said, "Okay, well, I guess." I mean, these were complete. I mean, motors, the whole 9 yards. So I ended up calling. I
That's a
called
lot.
Bill Purdy, who was Doug Purdy's brother from back in the racing days, and he was a motor guy, and I had him pull the governors out and do all the motors for me. And then I called Brett Strafford, who was he'd have been 14 probably then, and I said, like, I need, like, we didn't have like power tubing benders or anything. I mean, it was all hand ratchet, notch for the grinder, like as primitive as you could get, and we got it done. I had him like bending a bunch of the Nerf bars and just simple stuff because he knew nothing and I knew just slightly more than nothing, and I slept on the shop floor for a couple nights for a couple hours here and there, and we worked, or I worked. I mean, he worked a lot too, but I don't know. I worked 120 or 130 hours or something, and we got it all done, and the guy paid me, and so that was like a really good boost because at that point I got to start. I got a little bit of cash flow going, and then he wanted 10 more, and then he wanted 10 more, and that's how I met Tom Downey, who again since has passed away. He worked there and raced there, and I had a long relationship with them guys up there, and I built hundreds of go-karts for them, and then we started building some oval carts and started some building stuff that was really really fast, and that led into we're I guess I always liked like technology and change and stuff, so I always paid a lot of attention to what them guys were doing down south with the laid down seats and the big wheels and tires. And so I went to Bliss, to Barber's track, and I had this go-kart there, and it was just blistering fast. I mean, like, you can see there's pictures of it still. Like, them guys are all sitting up in their seats, and I'm laid down. My head's about 6 inches lower than theirs are, and that kind of started the ball really rolling. And next thing you know, Joe was a really good friend of mine. I was building his go-karts at Bicknell's when I was there for co-op, and now I'm down there racing against his go-karts, and then I started beating his go-karts, and then his customers were becoming my customers. And one thing I'll say about Joe, he was nothing but happy for me. So then we decided that a guy from Ohio named Clampett, Brian Short, he was a couple years older than me. He built motors and stuff. He called me and he says, you got some really fast go-karts and I got some really fast motors. Why don't we hook up and do something? I said, yeah, okay. So I'd never met this dude. I drove to his house with a go-kart, and we put a motor on it, and we decided to go to Columbus indoor racing, and had a guy from Ohio named Mikey Miller drive for me. And we ran 4 classes that day. They used to run 3 sessions. So the one session, we actually ran 2 classes in one session with one go-kart, switch motors back and forth in between. And so we ran a total of 12 races that day. So, 2 heats and a feature for each class. And we won 11 out of the 12 races and all 4 features.
Yep.
And it was, all of a sudden everybody's like, who's this kid? Like, who are you? Like, where'd you come from? Like, what's your deal? Do you build these things? And yep. So that was like really what got my big boost. It was, I don't know, it was crazy. I mean, I remember leaving there going like, I don't even know what just happened, right?
Yep.
I mean, you're like, you're so happy you want to cry, for crying out loud. It was just like, I can't believe that we just literally pulled this off. Like it was one of the proudest things that I've ever had happen to me, right?
Yep.
So
was that all out of the Highway 20 shop?
No, that was out of that same old shitbox shop in Empire Corners behind the lumberyard.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
Yeah. So
I first met you at the Highway 20 shop.
Yeah, which
and then you sold all that stuff, which had like powder coating and header coating, and then you went to bikes, right?
Yeah.
Give us that part.
Well, we did the funny story about the powder coating business was I went to a drag race with a friend of mine, Butch Roy, and we got talking. I said, I got an idea. I says, we need to start a powder coating company. And he's like, well, what do you know about it? I go, nothing. And he says, is it hard to do? I go, I don't know. I mean, whatever. Like, so he said, how much does it cost? He goes, I'll go partners with you. So I said, well, I don't know. I think we can do it for X amount of dollars. And the reason I wanted to start a powder coating company was I had a guy doing it for me who was in Font Hill at that time. They were a big company, and I had this old piece of shit truck, and they screwed up one of the go-kart frames. So I was driving home down Highway 20, coming back towards Cayuga here, Empire or whatever, and I blew the motor up in my truck. So I left it on the side of the road, and I was so mad I put one go-kart frame on each shoulder and called my brother and see if he'd come pick me up. And I walked for about an hour down Highway 20 carrying 2 go-karts, and I'm like, this probably isn't going to cut it. So I need to be able to do this on my own. So we built the spray booths and the ovens and everything. Well, we had all this at that little shop too, and we were out of room. And Butch actually had a carpet store on Highway 20, and he says, well, why don't we just move in there? So we went from this junk shop to this like 3,600 square foot shop that was like painted walls and nice and had heat and like the whole 9 yards, right? Then
feeling spoiled after what you've been working in.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then Pete called me one day and he said, Pete Bicknell, and said, he says, I heard you got a powder coating oven there. I said, yeah. He says, well, we're losing our guy that's powder coating our race cars. Are you interested in doing it? And I said, well, my oven's not really big enough to do it. And he says, well, what's it take? And I said, well, I need a little bit of time. I said, I'll build a bigger one. So I'm working on this thing. I'm building, I trying to get it built. I'm, trying to do everything by yourself. And he calls me one day. He says, like, what's the holdup here? And I said, well, like, it's me and like Brett, right? Like, and he says, well, what do you need? Like, people, help, money, time? Like, what do you need? Like, let's get this done. So I said, I'll get it done. So we went at it on a weekend and we extended the oven and got it all done. So from that point on, then I started powder coating. Like Butch and I were powder coating all the Bicknell race cars too. And I was doing all their aluminum welding because they never really had anybody that could weld aluminum. So I had taught myself to do that good enough. So I was doing that. And then I started the steering wheel business. I built all the steering wheels for like Butler built seats and all that stuff. And then I decided one day, because I don't like hot weather, I hate heat. And we moved down to Sea Park right beside Bicknell's just because I was doing so much business with them. They were doing so much business with me. It just made more sense to be closer to them. So I decided one day I wanted to sell the powder coating business because it was friggin' hot and it bothered me. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so I ended up making a deal with a couple guys. The one guy Dale still owns it now. And then it wasn't a couple months later, a guy called me. He says, hey, what was that clamp at? And he called me. He says, hey, you want to sell your go-kart business? I'm like, I don't know. Never really thought about it. He says, well, I got a guy who wants to buy it. I says, I guess everything's for sale. So I put a pretty decent number on it, and guy said he'd take it. So I ended up selling it. And Brett went to work for him. Like Brett was working for me, and I had Brandon Easy and, a bunch of guys working. And this guy bought it, and he just ran it into the ground. Like, I mean, in, like 7 or 8 months. And so Clampa calls me, goes, you want to buy this thing back? It wasn't Clampa that run it in the ground. He was doing everything he could to make it happen. But this guy was a meathead. And so I said to I guess she was my wife at that time. Well, she still is, but I mean, she wasn't I think we were married. I said, man, I'm thinking about buying that business back. And she's like, really? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, I don't really care what you do, So I ended up buying it back, but I didn't want to do any of the distribution. So I ended up making a deal with the guys at Performance Manufacturing to do all my distribution. So we just did the manufacturing, then we shipped everything over there, and they did all the distribution. But in the meantime, I had started Profab Metalworks, which was I did a lot of work on custom bikes, like fabricating and powder coating and stuff. And I'd had some ideas for some cool parts, and I built this thing called a transmission brake, which it eliminated the rear brake on the motorcycle, and it was all incorporated in the transmission. So I get these crazy ideas, and then I'm like, well, this is a good idea. So I'm going to go buy a couple CNC machines, and I'm going to build this shit myself. Well, I couldn't even turn a computer on. And I'm not kidding. Like, I knew nothing. Like, I didn't know anything about CNC machines. I didn't know anything about nothing. And I bought 2 of them. And then I bought the software, and I didn't know you could get training and stuff. So a guy named Dave Wilcock helped me out. He owned a big machine shop, and he kind of helped me out, like just a little piece here and there. Do this, do that, try this. Like, this is how you do this. And next thing you know, I'm machining shit. And we ended up selling our parts to Drag Specialties, becoming a supplier for them. And we had like 500 dealers across the states for our stuff. So in the meantime, then I buy the go-kart business back, and I just, we had 7 or 8 guys running. We had the custom manufacturing, like fab work, and then we were building the go-karts and then building the motorcycle stuff. And like, it was pretty crazy. And then I got this crazy idea, because if you haven't noticed already, I'm like the perfect poster child for ADD or mass boredom or something. And I decided that maybe
That's not a bad thing.
no, I think honestly, I think it's helped me over the years, but well, it's hurt me,
Yeah.
but it's helped me. But so I got this idea that maybe I'd sell everything and go back and take my dad's trucking company over and just buy that from him, because I mean, trucking's been our family for our whole life. And, uh, I look at every stupid truck that drives by and look at the lights on them. And I still to this day, I do it. I love transport trucks. I love driving them. I like looking at them, So then I decided, well, I was going to sell the go-kart business. So I called them guys at Performance, and I said, well, I want to sell the business to you. And they were like, well, we don't really want to buy it. And I said, well, if you don't buy it, I'm going to close it down. Well, it was a pretty good revenue stream for them. And they had been a big help to me when I was getting my motorcycle stuff going. I would use their shop to ship out of and stuff in the States. And so I told them, I said, listen, I'll just about give you this thing, and, I'll hold the note on it if you want, whatever. I need it to go to a good home. And those people have taken that business like to the absolute next level. I mean, what they have done is just mind boggling. Like, I could never have done what they did, because I'm too much of a scatterbrain. I guess I can't be without supervision, kind of thing. Like, I'm kind of that. I'm sort of that kind of person, And I know that. Like, the older I get,
Me too.
the more that I realize that, you can have all these. I'm just an imagination. I'm an imagination that's got feet, and sometimes I need people to carry on. Here's the idea. Here's the prototype. Here it is. Now you guys go make it. You make the instruction sheet. You figure out how to package it. Like, I did all that shit over the years, but I don't want to do that stuff. I just want to, create things, right? So they ended up buying the business, and then came up to work for my dad, and I was working up here, and it was really not what I was used to, like a total office. I did like a lot of everything, but it just wasn't really what I was used to. So I decided, well, I either needed to get out of here or get out of the trucking company or do something. And I'm like, I need to give it 100%. So I called the guy up who actually they own Fluid Damper. This is one of their companies. He had saw me at a motorcycle show, really liked my stuff, and owned a big business. And I called him up. Like, I looked up I called the old directory assistants, for crying out loud. I knew where he lived in New York, and I called him at like 9:00 one night. I said, hey, it's Bob Slack. Do you remember me? Oh, yeah. I said, I want to sell my business. And he said, really? I said, yeah. And he said, when can we come look at it? So this is like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. They were there. I met them at 7:00 on Saturday morning. They came, looked around, looked at the products, went over some quick stuff, and he says, I'll buy it. So now I'm out of everything, and I'm just into the trucking deal, and I gave it my all. I mean, I did everything I could to try and love it, but the only thing I loved was when shit went wrong and you had to figure stuff out. Well, if the only thing you like is when shit goes wrong, it's not a very good way to make money, because when stuff goes wrong in the trucking business, it's expensive. So I walked out of there one day at 4:00. I walked in, my wife was at home, and she's, "Oh, what are you doing home?" I said, "I'm done." And she was, "Done what?" I said, "I'm done. I can't do this anymore." And she's like, "Oh, well, whatever you want." She goes, "You know, you always make it work, so whatever works." Which most people probably wouldn't get that reaction from their wife, because I had a
Mandy's a saint.
oh god, yeah. I mean, I had a $300,000 mortgage on a house. I had no money saved because I blew everything I had building the house. I had a newborn, and and Dalton was, I don't know, maybe 2.5 or something like that. And now I just quit a really good paying job. So my dad was in Florida. Mom and dad were in Florida. So I had to call my dad and tell him, which was, still to this day, one of the hardest things I ever had to do, because I just felt like I was breaking his heart. And he's like, "Hey, you got to do what's good for you." He says, don't worry about it. I said, I didn't feel like I was doing him any justice being here, and I wasn't doing myself any justice. So he says to me in that conversation, he says, "Well, why don't you call Randy and Pete?" So Randy was on vacation, so I talked to Pete, and I call him up. I says, "I just quit." He says, "You just quit what?" I said, "I just quit working for Dad." And he says, "You're full of shit." I said, "I ain't kidding you." And long story short, I says, "Well, let's do something." He's like, "Oh, wow, okay." And that was another deal. Like, in a week's time, we went out for dinner one night, and we had pretty much had a deal kind of ironed out. And Randy was all excited and pumped up for it. And I mean, I don't know if they're all still happy, but anyways, I mean, too late now.
Yep.
So I said I didn't have any money, so we had to sell our house, and to get the money together to go do that deal at Bicknell's, because I mean, it's not a small business. It was a major league investment. It was a big chance for them, and it was a big chance for me. Like, we all took a really good swing to, for them to let me in the door, and for me to want to, go in the door, right? So I mean, I was counting change to get a coffee. Like, I mean, we were flat ass broke. Like, I had nothing. Plus, I sold my house and borrowed money, and fought that fight for a good number of years, till finally got myself in a position where, it wasn't quite as bad like that anymore. But that's how I ended up there.
Yeah. I can remember that, like my dad coming home and telling me, Bob Slack bought into Bicknell. I remember like yesterday. Yep.
Oh, really? Well, your dad was one of them guys, and you know how I felt
Yep.
about your dad, but everybody else should hear. I mean, I loved your dad. I mean, that guy was just like, I always say this, and I've told this to you. Your dad could be eating crumbs off the floor because he had no money, and if some millionaire walked in and he didn't like him, he wouldn't take the guy's money.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't give a shit. Like, it was just, this is all there is to it. This is how it is. And if you were wrong, him and I got along great. But if I said something that was wrong, he'd say, "No, you're wrong." Like, he didn't
Yep.
care. He wasn't worried about what the world thought about him. Like, this is what it is, and this is what I believe. And just an absolute genius of a guy. I mean, you remember I came to see him in the hospital the one time, and I was working on my new adjustable camber spindle, and I brought all the drawings and stuff into him to look at for for two reasons. One, so we didn't have to talk about him being sick, and two, if anybody could look at it and go, "You're screwed up," or "Now you're on the right track," it was him. So he's one of those guys that I could always bounce an idea off of, and I knew the answer that I was going to get was going to be intelligent. And that was those are the really cool relationships in life,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
now we start racing as a dad, and then we start becoming a dirt modified car owner. We're into that part. So start talking about like the decision to go racing with Dalton, and then the decision to buy that first car or
um
build that first car.
so
Not buy. You own the place.
so so to Well, I'll be honest, and if my dad listens to this, he'll probably think I'm a dick, but maybe not. But he never really took me go-kart racing. He took me once or twice. Um, he was busy. He was, had a business. He raced. They raced Friday night. They raced Saturday night. They'd race specials in the week. They'd race Sundays. And him and Sam Rounce, who, again, another one that we just lost, which was real tough. But so I guess I kind of had this chip on my shoulder, which I look back now, which is, makes me an asshole for being that way. But I was like, nobody would take me racing, so I ain't taking my kids racing. Well, I was working at the shop one night. It was about 11:30 at night. I'd got a new machine, and I was trying to figure this stupid thing out because I didn't know anything about it either. And I got this crazy idea. I'm like, you know what? My dad did not take me racing because he was a jerk. He didn't take me racing because he basically just physically couldn't, right? Like, there's only so many hours in a day, and he hates go-karts anyways, like hates them still to this day. And he'll never lie about that. So I called my wife and I said, Mandy, I says, I got an idea. She, what's that? I says, I think we should go take Dalton go-kart racing. And she's like, pardon? I said, yep. And she's like, are you serious? I'm like, I'm dead serious. And she's like, yeah, I don't care. Yeah, sure. So I called them guys over at Performance and I said, this is like on a Thursday night. I called them guys. I said, I need a go-kart ready to go by Tuesday. And I didn't really have any money at that point. And my grandpa actually, I got him to sponsor the motor. It was, $550 then. And I talked him into sponsoring the motor for me. And because I never asked him for anything. Anytime I ever borrowed money off him, I paid him 12% interest. And, that's how my family was. And they got this go-kart ready for me. And I took him out and we went racing the first time. And I was like, man, this is kind of fun, right? And Mandy wasn't there. I'll never forget. She was up north or something with her family. So I take him racing. So I go to pick him up. Her parents were looking after him because I can't even look after dogs. And so I got Dalton in the back of my truck driving from Cayuga back to my house to pick the go-kart up to go racing. He never wore a helmet or nothing really before. So I'm like, you got to wear your helmet in the back seat of the truck. He was in a car seat or whatever, I guess, still, right? Or booster seat, where they call them things. And we're driving down the road and I got him wearing his helmet so that he gets used to what it's like to have a helmet on. So we load all this shit up and we go to the races. And I don't know, I think he finished like second or third or something. And he made a couple really cool moves and made a bunch of, moves like every other kid that learns how to race go-karts. They drive around on the outside of the racetrack like a sprint car, have no clue where they're supposed to be. And I was like, this kid's got some potential, I think. So that led into, racing hot and heavy with, Trevor Wright and Josh Hansen and Kyle Phillips. And I mean, them kids were like, it was on like Donkey Kong, man. Like them kids were friggin' good.
It's a heck of a class
and
to
they
come
got,
up with.
Oh yeah, and they just made each other better and better. And then we started traveling and we started winning. My wife's like super into it. Like, she's not come from a racing family, but she was like, she just works like a dog at the racetrack. Like, I mean, cleaning tires and just like, she works herself just about to death. And we just started traveling all over the place and winning races. And my youngest, Elliot, he was kind of raced a couple times, but really wasn't all that into it. And he's a smart one because he's into fishing. So him and Chris Buttigieg that works with us there, he takes Elliot fishing all the time. We got him a boat and he goes and fishes. But so we get racing all over the place. And I think Dad might have came and watched a couple times, but then I ended up doing a go-kart up for Dalton. We were going to go run that New York series that one Sean Jeffries and them did. And I painted up just like Dad's race car. And I had Dad come down to the races that night and I surprised him and he seen it. And I think he came every single week to Maryville after that. He was just like dumbfounded that, now the go-kart looked like his race car, and he thought that was kind of neat, I think. So he came every week and pushed the go-kart and lifted the go-karts and did whatever, he had to do. And him and Butch and Mandy and myself and Elliot, and we just went right at it and raced all over the place. So as far as the big car stuff goes, this is another typical Slack story. So they all usually happen in a hurry and sometimes not with a lot of thought, but they somehow seem to work out. But Mike Prati from Dirt called me and he said, I'm working with this Carl Wagner guy out of Wisconsin with this spec motor thing, and maybe it's something we need to try. So Pete and I were bullshitting about it, and he said, yeah, that'd be kind of neat, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I need somebody to drive this thing. It's like, I'm not Billy Dunn. He raced go-karts for me. I mean, everybody raced go-karts for me at one time. Eric Rudolph and, like Billy Dunn and, like, guys like Kevin Root and, all these guys that are off running modifieds to this day, at some point in time, either raced one of my go-karts or raced for me or raced against me or something, right? So I called Billy and he says, yeah, I'll do it. So I had to go to Cambridge or something. That was on a Friday afternoon, and Dad called me. He was in Florida, and I was telling him about what we're going to do. So hang up the phone, and he calls me back a few minutes later. He goes, well, if you want to do this, he says, like, I'm in. Like, I want to do this. And I'm like, really? Why? Like, you just got to the point where you could take some time away from the business and go golfing and enjoy some of your cars, and he wants to do this. So I'm like, well, whatever. So I come home and told Mandy, and she's like, oh wow, you're really getting into it now. And I'm like, I guess so. So by Saturday morning, in typical dad fashion, he texts me, he says, order me a trailer, get me all the stuff I need. I'm like, well, like, what do you mean? Get me everything I need. I'm like, all right. So, by Saturday afternoon, I had the trailer underway and shit ordered, and off we went. So we went and raced that little motor that first year with Billy Dunn and won a couple features. And in the meantime, I'm trying to race go-karts, and our new trailer hadn't come in, and I'm switching stuff between big trailers and little trailers depending on where I had to go and where they had to go. And just about killed me for a couple years trying to keep up with all that shit, because we were running go-karts Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, and then on the weekend sometimes, plus trying to run this car 1 or 2 times a week, and a business. And Dad had a business, and we didn't have a shop the first year, or maybe 2 years. We worked out of the parking lot at BRP. We literally unloaded it, pushed it out, worked on it, pushed it back in the trailer every single time we wanted to do something. So then we ended up renting a little spot in one of the buildings at BRP that was not being used for our business at that point, and we moved in there, and that's the shop. We literally had to jack the back end of the car up and drag it out and through the doors to get it out. But that's where we won Oswego out of, with Tim Fuller driving it. And we had one other guy drive it, but whatever. And I won't say anything, but he talks shit about me. He's my family, so I don't like him. But then we got looking for somebody. I said to Dad, what about that Susie? He's like, yeah, he's a good runner. So then we got, Susie driving the car, and we'd still hit some specials and stuff, here and there with Shepard or Fuller or Billy or whatever. And that Susie thing turned into a real good deal. That's a lot of fun. He's a great kid. The whole family, good people. He's got good crew guys, like good people,
Yep.
And I always felt sorry for anybody who drove the car, because like I'm such a whack job. Like I'm always trying crazy shit. And Billy was probably the luckiest. He only had to try a little bit of crazy stuff, because I really didn't know anything about race cars at that point. So he probably got 50% crazy shit. But, then it got worse at some points and better at some points. But I always wanted always want to know what makes something work, whether it was, taking the VCR apart when you were little, which I did, and wanted to see how it worked. So
Yep.
we got doing that stuff, and then got to where we were a pretty good team, really. Not that it was really a very big team. It was me and Dad mostly. And, I always had a good relationship with Fuller and Shepard and Decker and all them guys. And then, we won Oswego, and we won, Shepard won that 12,000 to win race at Cornwall. And, Ryan was winning at Maryville. And
Yeah, is that your only big block win? Like series win with Ryan?
well, yeah, because it's
You've won a bunch of small block
yeah.
ones.
I've only
You haven't raced the big block stuff that
I've
much.
only ever went to 3 series races. One was
Yeah.
Oswego. We run out of gas, run an eighth, because they didn't have a quick fill in. And yes, Dad, that's my fault. And and then we went this spring to Weed Sport, and pretty much just kind of trying to shake some stuff down and figure out what we had. And it had been so long since we'd run a big block, or just Ryan hadn't run a big block or whatever,
Yeah.
but wasn't much passing that night anyways. So, but yeah, we won that big block show at Maryville with our small block, and I don't know, that was all well and good. And then we decided that we put Dalton in the car. In the first year, he showed some good promise. In the second year, man, we were so bad. I even said, maybe I don't know anything. Like, maybe I'm just stupid. So I'm not really much on giving up or letting people give up. And I finally told him, I said, listen, like, you need to just take some time off here. Like, you ain't having any fun. I ain't having any fun. Dad ain't having any fun. We just couldn't really get our heads wrapped around what was wrong, what was going on. So one Sunday morning, we all had a powwow, and that was another really, really tough thing in life for him to have to tell his grandpa he doesn't want to drive his race car anymore, and for for me to. I always had I have a dream, but I have a dream for my dad too, right? Like, he's 72 and he's in excellent shape, but you never know when Father Time's going to call your name. So, I always had things that I wanted to be able to accomplish with him. And suddenly all these things are flashing in front of our face where maybe this isn't going to happen. So that was really tough. But on the other hand, I got my pick of the litter of who I want to drive my cars. And Dalton said, well, call Danny O'Brien. Like, so, I got Danny O'Brien, I got Ryan Susie, I got Tim Fuller, I got Billy Decker, I got Matt Shepard, whoever else I'm missing, I don't remember. But I got Eric Rudolph. I got anybody that wants a good ride will always come drive my stuff because it's well maintained. The truck and trailer's nice and clean. It's all nice stuff. My wife or my mom always makes snacks or supper or food. So, it's a pretty good deal, right? To just show up and do nothing and drive, which has become, a pretty good race car. So, you kind of ride that way for a while. And a couple times I'd say to Dalt, I think we got something that's working real good right now. If you want to come back. And no, he went and raced his go-karts, and I said, every once in a while I just kind of drop a hint, and he'd kind of be like he was gonna, and then he kind of didn't want to, and Mandy'd be like, well, he told you he wants to, but I don't really think he wants to. And I'm like, whatever. So I told him, I said, listen, here's the deal. I can have anybody I want drive this race car and probably only race, 12 times a year, and as good a chance as winning them 12 races as anybody else who shows up. I said, that is an ideal situation. Like, I mean, you don't have to kill yourself all summer long, or, you can come back and drive, and we're going to have growing pains and we're going to struggle. And I'm all for that too. Like, if you want to do it, I'm in. If you don't want to do it, we'll carry on Well, then he decided that he wanted to come back, and it's been really good. It's it's tough.
One
Yeah,
race.
and had some good runs, and we had some brake problems at Fulton there, but that was fixing to be a real good run. And
to me, that was even bigger than his feature win, is winning his heat race at the Fulton 200,
Yeah.
his first shot.
Yeah,
and
and
like
then and running good, and we're running good in the feature, and I told him, I said, don't chase them big blocks,
Yep.
man, don't chase them big blocks. And then I think he started seeing he was getting passed by some small blocks. Well, then he turned it back up, went from ninth, back up to fifth again or whatever it was, and he looked like just about like anybody else who should have been in that race car. So that was really cool. That was really cool. So that's where we're at. And we mixed that cast car thing in there too. That was another one of my stupid ideas. But
And the checkered is out on another episode of the Southern Ontario Dirt Show. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe for future episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Southern Ontario Dirt Show. Have a question for the show? Email us, southernontariodirtshow@gmail.com. Thanks for supporting local racing in Southern Ontario, and we'll see you at the track.